As I continue researching the platelet-rich plasma procedure my mother is considering for a diagnostic of a degenerative joint condition, I ask myself, what causes coagulation inside the body that would interfere with blood supply being available to all parts of the body? What would block blood flow inside the body? What would cause blood clots inside the body? Because that's not how the vascular system works.
Find out how much punishment a car can take before it goes pop, or crack, or bang. We've pulled this plucky lot from the scrap heap to give them one final chance to further human knowledge. Today's test is all about oil. How important is it really? This brave Hyundai Elantra has done 127,000 miles and consumed more than 60 litres of oil in its time. So, how will it cope? With none. Paul, our mechanical expert, checks over the car and confirms it's all right.
Yeah, it's all right.
Oil lubricates the engine parts as they move up and down at thousands of revs per minute. Without oil, the metal parts will start grinding against each other, generating lots of heat. We want to find out what happens after that. With no lifeblood, will it just increase the wear rate of components? What happens after that? With no lifeblood, will it just increase the wear rate of components? Or will the engine actually seize? So we have an oilless car, but just how far will it be able to drive? To find out, we need a driver. Mark Holdsworth, a banger racing legend. Well, in the Midlands at least. He's won the World Demolition Derby twice and the Banger World Final. How many laps will he get out of the Hyundai?
I think the engine's going to be very noisy when it starts because it's got hydraulic tappets and obviously they won't work because there's no oil to it. She's off. We're off. Making a few noises. Go. She's still reaching 6,000 revs easily enough. The signs of it fading yet. Beginning to vibrate quite badly now. Obviously some of the bearings are drying up. So either the tappets now or the big end's beginning to knock quite badly. Big steps. It's slowing down a lot harsher as you come into the bend. Temperature gauge has gone really high, obviously, because the oil also cools. It's getting very, very slow. Yeah. It's completely sea solid. There's all sorts of smoke coming out from underneath it. That's it, over.
After less than 2 miles, the car ground to a halt. Paul inspected the wreck, but the smoking internals told the story.
Well and truly seized into that.
Yeah.
Conclusion is, if you run your engine out of engine oil, that's your result. So just to prevent all this from happening, a check once a week of the engine oil will save all this hassle in the future. This is as good as scrap now, you see.
Relax during diastole and are filled with blood coming from the upper chambers, the left and right atria. Then the cycle starts over again. Your heart is nourished by blood too. Blood vessels, called coronary arteries, extend over the surface of your heart and branch into smaller capillaries. Here you can see just the network of blood vessels that feed your heart with oxygen-rich blood. Your heart also has electrical wiring, which keeps it beating. Electrical impulses begin high in the right atrium and travel through specialized pathways to the ventricles, delivering the signal to pump. The conduction system keeps your heart beating in a...
You fill your engine back up with oil after you've had an oil change. So in this example, the engine's had a new oil filter, and we're just going to fill it back up with oil. So you fill it back up at the top through the oil filler neck. The oil then drains down into the bottom of the engine, into what's called the sump. Now when we start the engine, the rotational movement of the crankshaft, etc., will start to turn the oil pump, which draws oil up from the sump and then into oil filter to filter out the oil. It then goes up to the oil cooler. So the cooler is there to cool the oil down once the engine gets hot. The oil then is passed on through some channels through to the main end bearings and the big end bearings of the crankshaft and the conrods. The oil is then passed up to the top of the engine, up into the cylinder head, where it then lubricates the valve train and the camshaft.
coordinated and normal rhythm, which in turn keeps blood circulating. The continuous exchange of oxygen-rich blood with oxygen-poor blood is what keeps you alive.
So all of this takes around about 12 seconds from a dry engine. So you can see there it's pretty quick.
Do you remember tripping over as a kid and cutting your knee, and then magically the bleeding suddenly stops? Or have you ever wondered why this happens? Our body is very clever and produces substances to seal off the open wound. In this video, we are going to look at how and why blood clots. Clotting prevents us from bleeding to death, and also protects us from nasty disease-causing organisms called pathogens entering our body. When we injure ourselves, we can damage the blood vessels just below our skin. This can cause blood to either leak into our tissue and form a bruise, or if the skin is broken, to openly bleed. To prevent these horrible things.
I have no idea why EVMS would be calling me in the middle of this recording on a Sunday afternoon, but I'll let you speculate about that.
Happening, blood clotting occurs. So let's have a look at how this happens. Starting with platelets. These are tiny cell fragments that float around in our blood. When a blood vessel is damaged, collagen is exposed. This collagen exposure attracts platelets to the injured area. The platelets then stick together to form a plug. They've quickly built a barrier that stops us from losing too much blood. However, this platelet plug isn't that strong, so it needs to be made stronger. A protein called fibrin does exactly that. In our blood, there are soluble fibrinogen proteins. At a wound, these soluble fibrinogen proteins are exposed to outside chemicals that aren't normally found in blood vessels. Like with the collagen and platelets, this exposure causes the fibrinogen proteins to turn into sticky fibrin fibers. The fibrin fibers form a mesh, holding all the platelets together and making a much stronger clot. More platelets, red blood cells, and other components in our blood all get stuck to the mesh, making it even stronger. This clot stops more blood escaping the body, and also prevents nasty pathogens entering our body from the outside. The clot develops into a scab, which protects the wound as it heals, and new layers of skin form underneath. So really, all a scab is just platelets trapped in the fibrin mesh. It is like putting a plug in a sink. When the new skin is fully formed, the scab will fall off, revealing the lovely brand new skin underneath. A final thing to note, remember that I said the exposure to the collagen causes the platelets to stick together, and the exposure to the outside chemicals causes the fibrinogen to turn into sticky fibrin. Both the platelets and the fibrin only become sticky after the exposure. This means in a normal, healthy blood vessel, they won't randomly cause clots. So from this video, you should understand the magic of blood clotting. Platelets are first to the scene, closely followed by the fibrin fibers. Our blood clots so that we don't lose a lot of blood, and don't let lots of nasty pathogens into our body if we cut ourselves.
If you like the video...
Next, oil. It's one of the most important parts of your car, but one of the easiest to neglect. The stuff on here plays 3 crucial roles in the health of your engine. It lubricates the internals to prevent them from wearing out. It clings onto microscopic bits of debris to stop them from causing damage, and it cools the engine by transferring heat from the working parts. Half the cars on the road don't have enough oil in them. But just as important as the quantity is the age and quality of your oil. As oil ages, it becomes less effective. Let it go too far and it can actually damage your engine rather than protect it. This tasty Golf R32 is due an oil change, having done 10,000 miles since its last one. I'm taking a sample of its oil to the high-tech oil research laboratory of Intertek. By studying it at a molecular level, we'll see exactly what happens to oil as it gets older. I'll also test to find out if old oil makes your car slower. But first, laboratory manager Rob Chapman talks me through the sample. Rob, here I've got a brand new oil sample and also one that's done 10,000 miles. But the difference, just in colour alone, is phenomenal.
So that would be due to oxidation of the oil and also small particles of wear from inside an engine.
What would happen if I left this oil in the engine for, I don't know, 50,000, 100,000 miles without changing it?
Potentially, the small particles of wear would travel around the system and cause secondary damage, and eventually it could lead to the failure of an engine.
Yeah.
Potentially, the small particles of wear would travel around the system and cause secondary damage, and eventually it could lead to the failure of an engine.
Boom. As well as getting darker, oil's viscosity decreases as it ages and it becomes less effective as a lubricant. Our first test passes the sample through a glass capillary at 100 degrees Celsius. The faster it moves, the less viscous it is.
The result of the viscosity test comes out at 12.7 millimetres squared per second. Compared against clean oil, which was 14.2, is showing a drop of about 15% or so.
That means the oil is 15% less effective at lubricating the engine, resulting in more friction, wear and heat. Part of that drop is due to fuel seeping into the combustion chamber and thinning the oil. Our oil is actually 2.5% petrol. There are solid contaminants too. Over time, microscopic metal fragments break from the engine and are contained within the oil. To find out what our sample contains, Rob uses inductively coupled plasma atomic emission spectroscopy. This heats the oil to 10,000 degrees Celsius, causing it to atomize and emit light. Can I look in here and can I see things like exploding?
No.
The colour of the light indicates which elements are present.
So the analysis shown us that we've got copper 54 ppm.
Parts per million. Yeah.
And there's a bit of iron there, 22 ppm. So they're the two elements that shouldn't be there in clean oil that are present in the used oil.
Wow. The fragments measure less than 1/100th of a millimetre, but they can still cause friction, unwanted heat and wear. To reveal bigger, more damaging particles, we use an electron microscope.
So they can be bits of metal, could be bits of rust, or even looks like there's a bug maybe in there as well.
It does look like...
Have a look.
That's incredible. My sample is typical of what your engine will contain when it's due an oil change, so I want to find out if it's already blunting performance. This Golf contains the oil we examined. I'm going to test it from 0 to 100 miles an hour with the old oil and again with the new oil to see if there's any difference. Our telemetry will reveal the result. Oh, off we go. Grunty little thing. 40 miles an hour, second gear. Third gear, just sneaking 60. Foot flat on the throttle. 80 miles an hour, 90. We're in fourth gear. 6,000 RPM, touching 100. 17.9 seconds. After 2 more runs, I've got an average time of 17.86 seconds. Time to change the oil and head back out on track. Off we go. grabbing second. Up to 60 miles an hour. It doesn't feel any faster from sat here behind the wheel, but whether the numbers will tell a different story, we'll soon find out. Oh, wow, 17.3. It is quicker, over half a second quicker. It's not a fluke either. Again, I did 2 more runs, averaging 17.13 seconds. Over half a second quicker than the old oil. Wow, I'm really surprised at that. The old oil's lower viscosity, microscopic metal debris, and of course the little bug, contributed to reducing the car's performance, and this would have got worse as the oil got older. There's no cheaper way of making your car go faster, so next time you're thinking of eking out a few extra miles before an oil change, remember you'll increase long-term wear and make your car go slower.
Dialysis. Dialysis is a process through which waste products are artificially removed from the blood. Waste products are artificially removed from the blood to compensate for the presence of an abnormally functioning kidney. In a healthy kidney, waste products, excess fluids, and electrolytes such as sodium and potassium are removed from the body in the form of urine. In the case of kidney disease, the loss of kidney function results in the increased accumulation of excess waste, toxins, or fluid in the body. Thereby causing other complications such as hypertension, heart failure, pulmonary edema, metabolic acidosis, and hyperkalemia. Dialysis is performed in the following situations. 1. Acute kidney failure, or 2. To remove drugs or poisons from the body. Dialysis could be of 2 types. 1. Hemodialysis. 2. Peritoneal dialysis. Hemodialysis. This is done with the aid of a dialyzer, which is a machine present outside the body, which removes the toxic substances from the blood. A vascular access site is created by first numbing the area with local anesthesia and creating an arteriovenous graft by connecting one of the arteries with a vein with the help of a plastic tube, or an arteriovenous fistula by directly connecting one of the arteries with a vein. Once the graft or fistula has healed, hemodialysis could be performed for the patient. At the start of the process, 2 needles are inserted into the fistula or graft, allowing a circuit to be set up with the dialyzer. Blood flows out of the body into the dialyzer, which consists of filtering fibers that remove waste products and excess fluid from the blood, and a dialysate which acts as an absorbent solution for undesirable substances in the blood. Blood purified in this manner is returned to the body through the tubing into the second needle at the access site. When the hemodialysis session is complete, the needles and tubing are removed, and the patient is allowed to return home. Peritoneal dialysis is done using the peritoneal lining of the abdomen, without the external removal of blood from the body. A soft catheter is first inserted into the abdomen, near the belly button, creating a port through which the dialysate can enter or leave the abdomen. Each session of the peritoneal dialysis is known as an exchange. The abdominal cavity is first filled with the dialysate, using the catheter for a period of time determined by the doctor. Through the peritoneal membrane, waste products and excess fluid are continuously drawn out of the blood into the dialysate, which ultimately drains into a disposable collection bag during the exchange.
Place your bets, ladies and gentlemen. Place your bets.
We're at Rivers Casino Portsmouth. Today was the grand opening of the greatest casino in the state of Virginia. This was a community effort from the beginning when the citizens overwhelmingly voted to bring casino gaming to the city of Portsmouth. This has been an all-in effort for everyone to ensure that we have the best, the first, the finest casino gaming facility here in Portsmouth. So this is a true win-win from all aspects, from the people part to the revenue part to just being a good partner and bringing a new industry here to the city of Portsmouth.